Good evening and thank you for watching. My name is Kyra Haas. I cover education in the courts for Arizona Capital Times, and I'll be the moderator for this evening's debate. The Citizens Clean Elections Commission is the sponsor for this event. As the state's voter education agency, Clean Elections hosts debates so voters have the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, ask questions on the issues that matter most to them, and vote informed. Candidates that have a contested primary election have been invited to participate in the debate. Candidates that have opted in to the Clean Elections Clean Funding Program are required to participate, while traditional candidates are invited and encouraged to attend. Please note, candidates from both the Senate and House may be participating in the debate tonight. When voting in a primary election, voters are choosing between candidates of the same political party, so their preferred nominee may advance to the general election. As the moderator, I will ensure candidates have the opportunity to engage directly with their respective opponents. The questions that will be asked this evening are coming directly from the voters. Leading up to the debates, Clean Elections conducted outreach to voters across the state, asking for questions for the candidates. Additionally, Clean Elections surveyed voters to learn what issues are important to them. This survey data, along with input from the experienced journalists at the Arizona Capital Times, Arizona Agenda, and Green Valley News and Sarahita Sun, have been utilized to guide the discussion so it best serves voters. Of course, we want to hear directly from you, the voter. So, voters that are watching this debate live, you can submit a question at any time by emailing debates@kc-a.com, texting 480-808-1814, or calling 480-937-1253. Please specify if your question is for a specific candidate or for all candidates. We screen questions for clarity to eliminate duplications, speeches, or personal attacks on candidates. The debate is scheduled for 1 hour, so we may not get to all audience questions, but we will do our best. Candidates, you'll have 1 minute for your opening and closing statements, and 1 to 2 minutes for your responses to voter questions. We encourage an open exchange of dialogue between opponents. If you feel the need to respond to another candidate's comments, you may do so. I may limit responses for time management purposes, and we remind the candidates and the audience that this is a respectful, courteous, and professional environment. Our goal tonight is to connect candidates and voters so our electorate may vote informed. Tonight, we'll hear from 2 Legislative District 28 candidates. Republican Claire Van Steenwyk is running for State Senate, and the Republican Susan Black is running for State House. The order in which the candidates will speak has been determined by alphabetical order by last name, starting with the Senate, for opening comments, and then we'll progress from that starting point. Mr. Van Steenwyk, will you start the opening remarks, please?
Good evening to everybody. My name is Claire Van Steenwyk. I'm a Christian Constitutional American First Republican running for office in LD 28, which consists of Sun City West, Estancia, most of Peoria north of that when you get to Pinnacle and go north, and then all the way to the 17 and as far north as people live. I'm a retired businessman, also a political talk show host. I've been active in politics since I was 9 years old. I was raised by parents who believe that once you give your word, you're bound by it. I've lived that way through my whole life and in the businesses I ran. I've negotiated contracts over my lifetime, successfully, I might add, with every major grocery chain in the country, and had very good working relationships with them. So I believe if I can negotiate contracts with Walmarts and Sam's Clubs and Costco's, I should be able to negotiate a little bit of legislation down at the Capitol, which, by the way, I have done, but the party bosses got it killed once we got it out of committee. They have a way of doing that. I believe it's time for voters to have a true citizen candidate run for something. I've tried it before and haven't been successful, but that doesn't discourage me from trying it again. I believe that's how America was built, the people that didn't quit. And I know that party bosses want you to quit. It's up to the voters to begin to look at what's wrong with the state and the country and say, have the people in office served me? Are my schools better? Are my borders safe? Is my property taxes coming down? Do I have water for the next 1,000 years? Do I have all of these other things? And if the answer to those questions are no, I know in business, when I had people working for me that didn't perform that way after 2 quarters, they were gone. Because in the retail industry, if you don't perform, you go broke. And you can't afford to have people that are always saying, I'm going to do something, and then have 50 excuses why they never get it done. I believe politicians are great at promising, short on delivering, and that's another reason I'm running. I just believe it's time for Arizona to finally have someone in office that will work for the people that live in Arizona and not the lobbyists, special interest groups, and PACs. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Black?
Well, hello, I'm Susan Black, and I am a small business owner here in the West Valley. And I understand the regulations that saddle our small businesses. I'm all for economic prosperity for our Arizona citizens. I'm a proud wife of a military veteran, and I will defend our Second Amendment rights. I'm a mother of 4 beautiful daughters. 2 of them have actually followed the legacy of small businesses. I did experience a great deal of frustration in the public school system whenever they were young, and that drove me to create a charter school that was founded on back to basics, traditional education, and patriotism. I believe in school choice. No indoctrination or transgender education should be allowed in our school system. I'm doing my small part to drain the swamp, and I want to be proactive in our legislative and not be reactive. I will fight for our constitutional rights to secure our borders and our elections. Thank you.
All right, thank you both. We'll start with some questions about jobs and the economy. Arizonans are suffering some of the highest inflation rates in the country. In what ways can the state help ease some of the inflation and its burden on Arizona families? And we'll start with Ms. Black.
I would like to see tax reductions. I know my opponent has voted for tax raises, and I think now is the time to reduce our taxes and the burdens that we have on our taxpayer citizens. I think that's very important right now. There's other ways we can expand our job market in encouraging corporations to build here, and those are other ways that we can serve the economy. With that, go ahead.
All right.
My turn.
ahead.
Okay. I do believe that one way we can encourage businesses to come here and thrive is to either reduce or totally get rid of property taxes, especially on low income and people on fixed incomes that are in retirement now, because it's a regressive tax. It hurts everybody, and the cost of it, especially in business, gets passed on to the consumer. So that would be one way of doing it. Another thing we can do is fix our education. We need to put vocational training back into the schools from 7th through 10th grade. There's jobs out there that I know people can't fill. They would like to have some plumbers they could hire, our air conditioning people and others. These people are making 6-figure numbers. I mean, they're making some money. And we've got kids graduating out of high school that don't have any training. And then they want them to go on to a trade school, which they've got to pay for. When I was in school, that was in school. It needs to be brought back, as well as business classes, bookkeeping, record keeping, accounting, tech work, etc. This needs to be done by the public school system and merged into the charter school system. We owe our children a future. They're not going to have that if we constantly bicker with each other rather than fix the problems we have. I used to run companies. That's what I did. And I was hired by companies to fix the problems they had, not excuse them. I couldn't do that. I thought I could, but I can't. If you can't do the work, don't take the job. And we have a bunch of feckless people in office that cannot do the job. And that's proven by the results they don't get, along with some of the results they do get. Arizona is among the highest in the country as far as inflation. I think it's the top, actually. And we're the lowest in education. We've got to change those 2 numbers. We got to flip them around somehow. This has got to be done, but it's not going to be done by politicians who owe their life's work to lobbyists and special interest groups. They won't get it because that's how they get their money to run for office. Thank you.
All right. Governor Doug Ducey won office, pledging to cut state income taxes down to as close as zero as possible. Yet voters also approved Proposition 208, which was going to raise income taxes on the wealthy to better fund education. What are voters telling policymakers with these votes, and at what rate do you think Arizona should tax income? And Mr. Van Steenwyk, we'll stick with you.
I believe everybody should be taxed the same, quite honestly. I mean, am I supposed to be punished? I started out washing dishes and shining shoes as a kid, and I ended up as an executive vice president of a food company. I had to work anywhere from 12 to 18 hours a day sometimes. I was on salary, so I didn't get extra money for those hours. So someone should tax the salary I get when I put in all the hours that someone that's on an 8-hour job doesn't work. That's not fair. We're Americans. It says we're all equal, right? Equal in the eyes of God. Okay, if we're equal, then we should be taxed equally. But the same is said of education. We have got to educate our children equally. And property tax is one of the worst ways to finance education, because depending on where you live, depends on how much money the school district actually gets. And that's not right. Plus, it discourages business growth, because people go, well, I'll go to Texas. They don't have property taxes there in some areas. They don't have other taxes there. I'm not a real fan of Doug Ducey for a lot of reasons. But then I'm not a fan of a lot of the people in public service in this state, or what they call public service, elected office. Thank you.
Ms. Black?
Well, I have seen that, I know there's a lot of tax loopholes out there for the rich. I do believe we should be taxed equally, but I do see that often the rich are able to avoid tax implications because of the way we are able to structure our businesses. And that has actually been an advantage for myself in some ways. But I do agree with Claire as far as taxing equally. I do believe we need to all have, I would be a big proponent of a flat tax for everyone. That would be a good, fair way of dealing with things. Yes. So thank you.
Thanks. And let's talk a little bit about education. Do you believe Arizona's K-12 public education system is adequately funded? And if not, how much more should the state spend? And how do you propose raising that money? And if you could cite specific taxes you'd increase or other revenue sources and the new amount of funding that would bring in, that would be great. We'll stick with you.
Wow, that's a big question. So I am a big proponent of school choice. I do believe that there is a plethora of waste in our public school systems. Being on the school board for Adams Traditional Academy, we received quite a bit less funding than the public schools did. And with that, we had to operate lean and mean. And we were not able to provide public transportation for our students. Our parents had to provide that themselves. The public school system, I do believe, should have a cap at a 5% requirement for the administration. I believe they're admin top heavy on their expenses. And I do not believe that we should be continually funding waste in our school system. That's the problem that I do not agree with. I think I believe it was the Red for Ed that went through, the last big tax, whatever it was, that went towards the educational system. A lot of that money did not go to the teachers. Instead, it went to funding the CRT that we're so against right now, and the transgender education and curriculum. So giving them more money is not going to fix the problem. They need to be lean and mean with what they have, get it to the right places, and not be wasting it on curriculum that fits a socialist agenda and indoctrination in our schools. I am very adamantly opposed to all of that going on in our school system. And our teachers do need to be paid more. We are receiving less government funding in comparison to other states in the nation. But when we're wasting, you've got to be a good steward of what you do receive. And until they're good stewards of what they are receiving, I don't believe they need to have any more money. Thank you.
My position on that is really quite simple. I stated some of it a little earlier. we're rated number 50. Now, I look at continuing to pour money into the school system, kind of like putting money in a gas tank that doesn't have a motor under it and expecting it to start. There's fundamental problems within the school system. One of it is it's too expensive in the administrative part of it. Yeah, when they did the red for ed raise, we were all told by the governors and the senators and the legislators, the teachers are going to get the bulk of that money. There was nothing in the bill at all that gave them that money. It was given to the administrators and they had the discretion as to who got the money. And the money always ends up in the same place, in the administrator's office with all of the people at that level. It does not, some of it got filtered down to teachers, but not much. That is a problem. There's no doubt about that. And that's where the solutions have to start, is at the top. There's a lot of dead wood at the top in the schools, and it needs to be removed. And you could take that money then and administer it, say, into a vocational educational program for the kids, because they need it. But you can't just throw money at something and think it's going to make it better, because you're throwing money at the same thing that's running it now. It's not going to, you can't do that. I ran companies. I was hired to fix companies. I couldn't just go in there and say, you need to increase the budget. These companies didn't have enough money to increase their budgets. Neither does the school. And you can't keep going back to the parents for bond issues, because you've got districts in this state that the parents can't afford to keep paying higher taxes to fund those bonds. It just cannot be done that way. You've got to look at the schools, do a forensic audit, do a forensic view of the labor costs in that system as far as administration, cut the costs, see that the money goes where it is, but make sure the teachers that are teaching, educating those kids, are educating them, not indoctrinating them, not giving them a bunch of social nonsense. Educate them. History, math, science, government, trades. That's what you do in school. If you want to learn about, who to vote for somewhere, go home, talk to your parents or someone that you respect outside. It's not public education's job, nor charter schools' education's job to indoctrinate our children. That's not why I was sent to school, and I don't believe that's why parents send their children to school now. So yes, our schools need to improve. But first we have to see the problems there and fix them if we want them improved. Because I want to see the children of the future have the same opportunities I had when I got out of high school, where I walked right into a job, and I've never really been unemployed if I didn't want to be ever since then. Thank you.
Can I add to that as well?
Of course.
So one of the things, the Peoria school system in their budget, they had millions of dollars that went to the CRT curriculum, millions. And that also went to training the teachers for CRT and SEL, millions. That is unacceptable. And beyond that, we have dummied down the school system. There's when my daughter 25 years ago, she was put in kindergarten, and out on the playground, she came home and said the kids are saying F words out on the playground. Immediately, I knew this wasn't going to work. And then when I found out that we're ranked 50th in the nation, and that's 25 years ago, nothing has changed in 25 years other than indoctrination, dumbing down even more than what it was back then. It's ridiculous. We need to bring the standards up and teach the kids reading, writing, and arithmetic. It is unacceptable for these kids to not have consequences in doing, they get passed on. They need consequences and to be held back if they're not going to meet the standard of the grade level. So thank you.
All right. And let's talk a little bit about school choice as well. Arizona's empowerment scholarship accounts allow students to use taxpayer money that would ordinarily go to a public school to attend a private school instead, though currently only specific groups can access these ESAs. Do you believe this voucher-like program should be extended to all Arizona students? And we'll start with Mr. Van Steenwyk.
I believe every child should have the same opportunities of every other child. And if you're going to give a child enough, see, to me, it's like if school, let's say Lincoln Elementary, isn't teaching children real well, but over here at Roosevelt Elementary, they are. Take your child out and bring him over there. Or if there's a charter school, the money follows the children. The children shouldn't be following the money. We pay taxes. The parents pay the taxes. The homeowners and the business people pay the taxes to fund the system. So therefore, wherever that child can find their niche and get a good education and be comfortable, that's where they should go. But once again, it all goes back to how well are our teachers prepared to teach the fundamentals to the children. I've gone to some teachers conferences, and it astounds me when I hear some of the teachers speak they're in their 20s, and I'm listening to them and I'm thinking, what country were you brought up in? You don't know the fundamentals of this nation. I was told by some teachers at a conference one time, we're now a mobile nation. And I sat there and I thought, we're now a mobile nation? How do you think we got from the East Coast to California before airplanes were invented? And so I explained it to them. I said, before we had trains, planes, or automobiles, people walked, rode horses, donkeys, or wagon trains to get from Pennsylvania or New York all the way out to California. We've always been mobile. Mobility has nothing to do with these issues. What has to do with the issues is the children. Another thing you have to have in schools is discipline. I'm not talking about the kind I had when I was a kid, or if you did something wrong, they bent you over right away and swatted you. But if your child's misbehaving in a class, there's got to be consequences for what they're doing. They disrupt the whole class, and then nobody learns. So you've got children that really want to learn that don't get to learn because of one child that misbehaves. You tell the child, you get a hold of the parent, and let them know. If you cannot get your child to behave in our school, he will not attend here, or she will not attend here until they do. We're not going to have disruptions. We're trying to educate the other children that come here to learn. The parent is the one who has got to get the children under control so the teacher can keep them under control. If you got a child that you don't do anything with at home, what do you think they're going to be like when they get to school? This whole thing is got to do with behavior, funding, but the basis of it is I talk to kids that have graduated high school and can barely read. They don't know how to do math. That's, how are there's companies here that when you hand them a diploma from a high school in Arizona, they think it's scrap paper because of that. That hurts the opportunities for those kids. That just isn't right. We're adults. So we need to stop arguing over teachers' unions and all the other feckless, stupid stuff we do. Look at the child. What does that child need? Not want, need. And you fulfill the need of that child to prepare that child for when they graduate high school. Because quite frankly, not every child in school is wired to go to college. And I think it's, 60 or 70% of the kids that go to college drop out. So prepare them with trades and vocations. So when they get out, they can walk right into a job at, say, a Chevy dealer making $38 an hour working on a car, because the kid likes to work on cars. Find things they like to do already that they've already gifted to do and educate them, give them an opportunity, but tie those trades back into their math class or their English class. Let it all network together so they have incentive. If you don't do well in math, you're not going to get to go to that vocational class. That's the best. You force the child to learn. Sometimes you have to. They had to force me to learn. I'd rather go out cruising every Friday night and party a lot. So that was my history. But yeah, sorry if I went too long.
No worries. Ms. Black, the question was, do you believe ESAs should be extended to all Arizona students?
I do believe, but in that, however, I do believe that a lot of homeschoolers do not want the ties with the federal government money. They do not want to be mandated as to what they are teaching, and they want to continue to still have the flexibility to teach the religious aspect of things and, the correct history and civics, and they don't want the ties into the federal government money to affect that. So we need to be careful to honor and respect those wishes of the homeschooler organizations as well. And the other thing is that we have to keep in mind is a lot of rural communities do not have school choice. We're blessed here, in the North Phoenix area. We have many, many charter schools, North Peoria, west side of the valley. We have several amazing charter schools with Great Hearts and Candeo, and there's many, many great, really exceptional charters. But the rural communities don't have those choices. They have to go, it's either homeschool or government schools. And, so we need to work diligently to bring those standards up for those government schools for those rural communities, because that isn't an option. And that's important to keep in mind when we're talking about school choice, that school choice isn't always a school choice for everyone everywhere. So, those are things to be mindful of as well. And the other thing is, the public school system, they get 14,000 per student, where the charter schools, I believe they're at 8,000 per student. So the equilibrium piece of that is not the same. It's not equal at all in whatsoever. And we need to make sure that that is equalized in many areas. And that's why our public school system is able to waste so much money, because they receive so much more. So I'm definitely in favor of school choice, but we need to be mindful of what that involves for those other students and those parents as well. We need transparency in our curriculum. And that's why people go to school choice. So thank you.
May I add one more thing?
Sure, go ahead.
When you talk about government in our schools, the federal government has no jurisdiction in our schools. They've taken it and the states have handed it over to them because they get a nice check once a year from the federal government if they follow these certain guidelines. And a lot of the guidelines that they're following force them to teach certain things and do certain things. And the staff you've got to have at the Capitol just to make out the paperwork costs a lot of money. So I would like to see Arizona cut themselves off from the federal government, because constitutionally, they have no authority to be in our schools or to tell us how to teach our schools. It's not mentioned anywhere in the Constitution. And as it says in Testament, if it's not mentioned in the Constitution, then it falls to the state. But a lot of states are using the federal money as the excuse they can use to say, this is why we do a terrible job. They always put it that way, but that's down to earth, that's what they're doing. It's because of the federal government that we can't fix this. It's because of the federal government we can't fix that. Well, you're a state government, you can fix anything within your four borders. So fix it or just resign. We can fix these things if we focus on what causes them, the cause, kind of like cancer. You don't cure cancer by pulling somebody's tooth or filling a cavity. You've got to go after the cause. The cause in Arizona is part of it is misplaced funding. Another part is the federal government interferes with what we want to do with our children, and they have no business here. And they need to be removed from the operational system of the school system. I'd like to see Arizona be the first one to do it.
I would love to see the teachers' unions gone, but I'm sure a lot of people have some objection to that.
Yeah, well, you get the right in Arizona or in any state if you want to belong to a union or you don't. But that doesn't give the federal government the right to tell you. The federal government can't tell me how to run some of the businesses I built, because I built them. They couldn't come in my office unless I went to them to get money, which I never did. They have no business coming into the school system and telling us how to raise our children or how to educate them. That's where all this nonsense, CRT and Project 1619 and all the rest of this nonsense comes from. It comes from them. We don't need it. And I believe if you did a poll, you'd find most parents don't want anything to do with it. They want their children educated, not indoctrinated, not beat up, not treated poorly. They want that kid to come out of school and go to either college or go to work. Not just sit on the side of a curb trying to think, what am I going to do now? I can't read.
Right, let's move to the next question and we'll circle back around here. But this is a live one we just got in and it's for both of you. And the question is, do you support medical aid in dying for eligible adults? And we'll start with Ms. Black.
Medical aid in dying. I guess I need a little bit more.
I mean,
are they referring to? Yeah, go ahead.
Assisted suicide?
Is that what they're referring to?
They didn't specify, but that is what the question sounds like.
So I am not for assisted suicide. I actually currently have a mother-in-law right now that my husband is in Florida. She's on hospice, and she has been for several days now. And I've been a part of watching my own mother, go through the dying shutdown where she stopped eating, she stopped drinking, and basically went on morphine for the pain and, to gradually slip away, so to speak. And, I was very careful to not overdose her, so to speak, where she was in a morphine coma, but yet still remained comfortable. And they're doing the same thing in Florida with my mother-in-law. And I'm not for assisted suicide, but I do believe in a quality of life, and I am pro-life in many ways. And life is important, and I believe I think that can be the most beautiful gift for a senior, to be able to have their loved ones be present and be there to usher them into the kingdom of heaven naturally. And I think that's important. I was able to do that with my own mother, and it was very difficult, but it was a gift that I could give my own mom, but not in a way that was assisted suicide. So it was a natural process, and I do believe in that. Thank you. I hope that addressed what the question was.
If they're talking about assisted suicide, I'm not in favor of it at all. I think it's overused by a lot of people for whatever reason they want to use it for. I've watched a number of family members die with cancer and other diseases. It's painful both for the person dying and for the person watching. There's nothing fun about watching someone you love and care for slipping away from you. But in the same regard, I would hate to be the person that gave somebody a couple of pills so they could just slip away quicker. And then maybe the next day find out they just found a cure in a pill that would have helped that person. We have a lot of programs now where people can find and use drugs that are they're experimenting with them to see if they'll work without anybody doing any damage. And if the person happens to die from them, they're not going to be sued. That pharmaceutical company will not be sued. President Trump, I believe, got that through. I'm glad for that, because I believe that was long overdue. But to just decide to help someone die, and some people that want to die, because I've been around a few, I used to work in a lot of different outreaches in California, they just want to die. I've met people that just don't want to live. They're not sick. They're just so depressed they want to die. And I know a group of people that believe this is a suicide, that, well, if that person's depressed and wants to die, you ought to help them die. So the question I would have to people that want to do this is, where does it stop? What in today's culture, I mean, it's crazy today. If you're a 5-year-old and maybe play house and some girl talks you into wearing a dress, then all of a sudden you're a girl. Well, maybe you could talk some kid into wanting to not live to be 8. I just think you're slipping, you're getting off a slippery slope here, and it's not a good idea. We're not God. He takes care of that. We take care of ourselves. He gave us the brains and the facilities to do that. And to help someone die that way, no. Help them live a little longer or more comfortable, yes. But not help them die, not that way. Thank you.
I want to add to that.
Yeah, go for it.
So in my own experience, when my mom got very, very sick, and she was on the morphine with hospice, and she miraculously had a pretty strong recovery. And, we kept talking with her. We brought out photo albums. And she was literally on her deathbed. She'd quit eating and drinking, and she'd given up her will to live. And we just kept talking to her. And, even though they are on the morphine and they can hear you, can hear you, and they know what's going on around you and around them. And we just kept encouraging hope and praying over her. And, it was amazing that we were able to have this was the middle of November, 3 years ago, she passed away, and she got well enough that she was able to sit up and have Thanksgiving with us. We were able to have an early Christmas with my family back in Missouri. And then again, she got a call from Mayo Clinic for a test for her cancer. And so she was able to come out here and stay a couple more weeks. And she miraculously recovered. Unfortunately, she kept getting up and trying to walk on her own, and she ended, and I shouldn't laugh, but she fell instead. That ended up taking her life instead of the actual cancer, which was sad. But we wouldn't have had those extra few weeks if we would have succumbed to that early death sentence, so to speak. And I'm very grateful our whole family was able to truly have a wonderful time with her those last few weeks. And that was an amazing gift for me and the whole family. So, and I know her will to live before had gone, but thankfully we were able to bring her along and pray, and the encouragement and music and photos and memories. And, that was a wonderful gift. So I'm definitely pro-life in every way.
All right.
I don't have a fly.
Oh,
A gnat's going to be bugging me now.
oh shoot. Staying, I guess, on the subject of healthcare, looking back at the last 2 years of COVID-19, how do you believe Arizona managed the pandemic? And if you could share one aspect of the challenges it presented where state leaders did well, and then one area where of mismanagement, that would be great. And I believe we are still with Mr. Van Steenwyk.
Personally, I believe Arizona did terribly. It allowed us, or it allowed the so-called authorities that be the mayors, the governor, others, to tell us we could eat, who we could go visit, what businesses could be open, what businesses had to close. They decided to make determinations of what they felt was critical. It was critical to have Home Depot open, but not your church on Sunday. It was critical to have Joe's Bar and Grill open, but not your church on Sunday. It was critical to have this place open, but you couldn't go talk to your grandparents or your parents. You couldn't have Thanksgiving. All these things they felt were critical. Or they called it, I think it was Emergency Powers Act or some stupid thing like that. We are a governed republic. We are a sovereign state. Nobody outside this state or inside this state has the authority to take our rights from us. The right to assemble, the right to free speech. I mean, if you think about it, you go to there's a denomination, Assembly of God Church. They couldn't even assemble in an Assembly of God Church. They definitely couldn't speak, so they couldn't have a congregation there. So they had no freedom of speech. Your freedom of religion was halted because you couldn't go to church. You can't do these things in our form of government. But the fear of being sick or dying is what got everybody to obey. Fear. And our founders once said, if you accept a little bit of security to give up some of your freedom, pretty soon you'll have neither. Well, they haven't stopped yet. They're still at it. You got that dodo bird in Washington. They're talking now about another virus wave, and they want to do more mandates, and they need more money for COVID, and they need more money for this. They want more money. Tell them to go to China and get it. That's who sent it here. That's what they need to do. Our government in general, from Washington, Arizona, and many other states, failed us as voters. But the voters, in a sense, failed themselves because they allowed these people, these fear mongers, to scare them half to death. I saw it especially in senior communities. I happen to live in one, where I watch people to this day driving around in their car by themselves with a mask on. Now, I don't know if they're going to get infected by the bee that's in the car, or fly, or maybe their air conditioners. I'm not sure, but that's how scared some people still are. And that's sad. I was raised where we used to go play in the dirt, went and did stuff. I went down to the riverbed not too far from my house, played in the bamboo jungle where all kinds of people, bums used to sleep. We didn't think about germs. We were just having fun. But they managed in a short amount of time to take the joy out of people's lives. I know people had lost loved ones during that time. They never got to go visit. And they're never going to forget that. And you got grandparents who miss seeing a new grandchild born or graduate or whatever. You don't get that back. And that was taken by our wonderful, illustrious leaders out of Phoenix and a few things out of DC. Now, our government totally disappoints me, but it does that on a normal basis in other ways. But as far as the China virus, they handled it terribly, except when you go to some other states. Like, I don't know, south somewhere, southeast of here. It starts with an F, I think, Florida. They evaluated what was wrong, and they saw, kind of like a business would do. You look at it and you go, okay, well, we can do this, we can't. And then they did, and it worked. And it worked. They finally got bright and started to do something here, but they did it they let us sort of out of jail after they put us in it. So it doesn't make up for it, and never will. Thank you.
Ms. Black?
Yes, so I believe they violated our constitutional rights for freedom of speech and freedom to assemble, freedom to operate business. I mean, they totally annihilated and did not obey any of our constitutional rights. And we're in the meantime trying to push a socialist agenda. And pushing the whole fear, with Fauci and all of what was going on with there and the mask mandates. And to be quite honest, my husband and I, we traveled to Florida when we, during the pandemic, we went to Missouri. We did more traveling during the pandemic because it was the slower time, and enjoyed ourselves and didn't wear masks unless we absolutely had to. And even then we tried to push the envelope and not wear them if at all possible. And I've complimented, even when I've gone into doctor's offices and they're not requiring masks, because some of them still are, I make sure I compliment them on that. And then our church, I'm a president of our church, and we shut down for 30 days, and that was it. We were one of the very first churches to open up and not require the masks when they came in. And we honored that. And because of that, our church grew. And I've heard that from a multitude of others, is that because they went ahead and opened up, and, we did things to protect people. We tested, did the temperature gauge thing. And, I felt like that was reasonable. That wasn't offending people. And we also live streamed. We did everything we could to accommodate, but still not interfere with constitutional rights. So I think that Ducey did not do the best on that. He could have improved on that dramatically, especially by shutting down small businesses. I thought that was wrong. Thankfully, my business did quite well during the pandemic. It actually, people having to move, I'm in real estate, that worked to my benefit, and I was considered essential. So that was a nice perk for me. But and the funny thing is, we did some things as far as, carrying around hand sanitizers and all that. And it was funny. I'd go to show houses without a mask on, and people would show up with masks, and I'd say, you don't have to wear that around me. I'm okay. And I did get COVID twice, but it was barely the flu, So, and I understand there's a population that it's a big deal. I'm not saying it didn't exist, but and I do know that it affected quite a few people. I am definitely against mask mandates, and definitely the mandates on the jab. I am not for that in any way. And I do not believe, my daughter, she works for Banner Hospital, and they pressured her so bad and bullied her into getting the vaccine and getting the booster. I mean, she's young. She didn't feel confident enough to stand up against it. And she took it and was deathly sick. And, just from the vaccine, and she even had COVID. So, that whole thing just irks me to no end, how that was handled. I'm thankful that I didn't live in New York or California. And to be quite honest, we wanted to take a cruise. We're not taking a cruise because I'm not going to get vaccine, and I'm not getting a vaccine. So no cruise for me. And that's a choice. So we have a great big United States of America that we can travel in and not go overseas. And that's okay with me. So there's a lot of options that we can make choices, thankfully. And I'm grateful for that. So thank you.
I'd like to add one other thing.
Yes, and I want to make sure we have time to get to all the questions. So
the governor wasn't alone in this. He had the entire legislature that didn't do anything to stop him. And they were elected to represent us. He may be elected as the executive. They're elected to represent us and to put a stop to it because they all know how all of us felt about this. So that's all.
All right, I have one more question about healthcare, and then we'll touch on elections, and we'll see how we're doing on time. But this question, talking about some of the pandemic-related issues here, hospitals and clinics around Arizona, especially in rural areas, have struggled to attract and retain healthcare professionals. And the pandemic exacerbated, that problem. If elected, what's your plan to combat this shortage of healthcare professionals? And I believe we're with Ms. Black.
Get rid of the mandates. The vaccine mandates need to go. And for the medical field, I think that would help tremendously. I believe there are people that are going into the field. I know personally of several new nurses, people that are going into the nursing field that chose not to go into the nursing field because of the mandates. So that's going to create a greater shortage down the road. The mandates need to go, period. That's my main, thank you.
All right.
A couple of things. Yeah, I agree. The mandates do need to go. That would definitely help the medical profession. But also, I think what you need to do is, and especially in the rural areas, we've got some, we call them hospitals here in the valley, that are enormous. And we all know what an octopus looks like. So they could all take their body and extend their tentacles out to certain rural areas to provide some medical care in those areas. And if they needed to be supplemented a little bit to do it, that's fine with me too. But once again, you can go back to education. And if we had a vocational system in our schools, young ladies and men that wanted to be in the medical field, nursing, or just a practical nurse or whatever, we could train them while they're in high school. They could be trained in high school. And when they graduated, they could go get a job. And it wouldn't cost them anything. It basically, because it's a training program in a school system, in a public school system. Like we used to train welders and painters and carpenters, and we did, and bookkeepers and accountants. When I was in high school, business classes, accounting, record keeping, forensic audit studies, typing, da. Now you don't have typing, you have computers, but they were all taught these things in school. When they graduated, they could get jobs, and they did. We can do the same thing here. We don't need some outside companies to come in here and do it. We have an educational system all over the state set up, and we could do it here. Have the people that are operating medical facilities inside our state already to expand themselves a little bit out into more rural areas. Yeah, there's a profit and loss system here, but medical care is medical care. And that's one of the programs I think we could implement in this state and do it in such a way that no one loses money and everybody gets better care. Thank you.
And let's move to elections. Arizona has been at the forefront of voting by mail for about 3 decades. Do you support voting by mail as it exists today? And if not, what reforms specifically would you vote to enact? And we are still with Mr. Van Steenwyk.
I never experienced voting by mail until I moved to Arizona. I lived in California, Iowa, and Idaho. Never voted by mail. The only time you could vote by mail is if you were ill, you were going to be out of state, or you were in the military, or you had by being out of state, I mean, you had to go on an emergency leave or whatever it was. So you could make sure your ballot was forwarded to you there. So you could get it mailed to you, not forwarded, but mailed to you there. The voting system is corrupt in this state. I've witnessed it myself with my wife. We were at the county recorder's office in Phoenix, not the downtown office, the satellite dish around the corner. We watched one young man walk in there. You know, the flip top lids that you used to buy to store stuff, the big plastic containers? He carried in 5 of them full. So they hold from 150, I would say, to 200 to 300 ballots. Each one was full. All he did was walk in, went to the barrel for the ballots, and dumped them in. When I asked one of the recorder's people in the office why they weren't checking him, I knew what the law was. I just wanted to see if they did. They said, well, you know, we're not allowed to ask them any questions because you can be a relative or a caregiver and harvest ballots. They don't call it harvesting, but that's what they are doing. And we are not allowed to ask them anything. Well, how do you know if they're a relative or caregiver? You don't. But this young man brought in 5 containers of those things. So you had a minimum of 750 and as many as 1,500 votes. That system is corrupt. You've got people getting ballots mailed to them at post office boxes. You got ballots going to people's homes that don't even live there anymore. I know a lady that told me she got 3 ballots at her home. One was for her dead husband and one was for someone else who lived there before she did. She could have voted 3 times. They don't have a way to authenticate signatures other than someone looking at them. And I know that if you're going to be a certified person looking, you've got to go to school, or you've got to have a computer system that can read a signature and compare it to something. We don't do that in Arizona. We just kind of, oh, well, must be good. And then we throw away the envelope. So there's no way to prove it's bad. The politicians like the mail-in system, especially the incumbents, because they know exactly how it works and they know exactly who votes. And that's who they focus on to get votes from. That's one of the reasons the system is corrupt. Another reason the system is corrupt, we have over 30-some thousand federal-only voters now. They don't even have to prove they were born anywhere. There's no, you don't have to have a record of birth or prove where you live. Just fill out the form and you can vote. Only for federal officers. But I believe President Trump lost by a few thousand votes. When you have over 30,000 federal-only voters, it's not hard to see what can happen there. So no, I do not favor the mail-in only ballots. I know people love it. They've gotten lazy. They enjoy it. I grew up as a child watching people come to my elementary school, lining up in the morning on their way to work and voting, and then going there all day to vote. I'd like to see it return to that. And if you have to, okay, expand it to 2 or 3 days. But another thing I'd like to see in Arizona is take voting from August and move it to, say, the 3rd Tuesday of June or the 1st Tuesday of May. So it's not, when so many people leave, there are people that live here 12 months a year, but leave for a couple of months. They don't get their early ballots. They don't get to vote. And the parties know exactly how they've got this dialed in. And that's what's wrong. That's another thing that's wrong. They're controlling who gets to vote and the returns. I don't like it. And they didn't fix it either.
Oh, sorry. I just want to make sure we have time for
They did not. Our legislators that said they were going to fix our election system didn't fix anything. They said, now you have to show your ID when you go to a polling place. I go to polling places. I already had to show my ID. They didn't fix anything, which is the same feckless energy they always give into things. They're always promising and not delivering. It's simple.
All right, Ms. Black.
Thank you.
Okay, so the mail-in ballots, that was the question, correct?
Yes.
So I am guilty of a mail-in ballot as well. But I am definitely willing to give that up to tighten up our laws and our standards. And there needs to be accountability. That's the other thing. There's laws on the books that they're not following up, and there's no accountability with. We definitely need stricter mail-in ballots to the homebound and the military. And like I said, I'm willing to give that up. We need no ballot harvesting, and there needs to be accountability. Somebody walking into the precinct or the polling place with 5 boxes is unacceptable. And we need no Dominion machines. My opponent voted to keep the Dominion machines. That's unacceptable. I mean, they're corrupt. That's just common sense. Where's the common sense in our government? It's unbelievable what's going on out there. And I would love to see our election decertified. I think that'll be a miracle, but I think we have too many moderates in office for that to happen. But I am definitely for stricter signature verification. I would love to see a hand count at every precinct, although I've been told that might be a little bit difficult to do. I'd have to know a little bit more about that, but we definitely need to tighten up the system. They passed several bills, but it's not enough to really tighten up the holes in the system. I'm still very concerned about how things are going to go in August and in the general election. There definitely needs to be accountability, and that's not happening. They're not indicting the people that broke the laws that are already on the books. And, that's the problem with the system right now. There's no accountability. People can pretty much do willy-nilly whatever they want and get away with it. And, there's the 2000 Mules movie that's just come out. And, we already know what is in that. And that's just unacceptable. I mean, it's common sense. You don't see a fold in the ballot. Come on, um, kick it out. I mean, where's the common sense? It just, there is none. And there seems to be nobody that's really willing to step in and hold people accountable. So that's basically what I feel. Thank you.
All right,
One
and we
more
have
thing.
about, oh, yeah,
One
go
more
ahead.
thing. Another thing, a lot of ballot harvesting is done at senior rest home facilities, where you have some seniors that are really bedridden and can't do much anymore. And I'm not going to say which side. It could be an activist Republican worker, an activist Democrat worker that will actually take ballots, fill them out, and turn them in from those places. So the whole system is wrought with fraud. And most people that have never been out there don't see the fraud that's going on. And I was at a poll doing some work here last election, and people from California were bringing ballots that I said, what are you, no, we just went out and collected some from some of the people in that neighborhood we're staying in. Now, what's going on here? I'm not saying they printed the ballots, but why are they bringing ballots? These two were from California, and they walked right up into the polling place and dropped them off. No one questioned anything about where you're from. Are you related? Are you a nurse or carry? Nothing. You're not allowed to under the law then and under the law now. That's dangerous. We can't have a free country if we can't secure our voting system. You just don't, your right to vote is already gone because they will change how you vote. Thank you.
All right, we have time for one more question. And this one is from a voter. So, do you believe that we need term limits to end lifetime careers for politicians? If so, what length of time would you recommend for new term limitations? And I believe we're with Mr. Vance.
Okay. Yeah, I do believe in term limits.
I believe that's where we're at. We keep going back and forth. I do believe in
term limits, and I believe that Arizona is a perfect example of a revolving door. You can serve 8 years in the House and then automatically flip over to the Senate and then flip back over to the House. And they do it all the time. LD 22, 4, 22, and now it's 28 is notorious for that. I've watched them do it a number of times. They just, well, I'm going to run for the House this year. Okay. Well, I'm going to run for the Senate. Okay. 4 or 6 years go by. Why don't you take my job and I'll take yours? Because they've been on the ballot so long, people are so used to seeing their names that they'll automatically do it. My idea of this is, okay, you want to do it? Okay, 2 terms, that's it, you're done. And you cannot run again for another term in either one of those bodies. If you want to go run for something in the state or the county or a city or a school district, that's fine. But in the House and Senate, you are forbidden to run for at least 2 years, cannot run. But the term limits that I want, I know that people in office will never do it any more than they'll do it in Washington. And the voters, quite frankly, are too lazy to do it. Because we vote more like some people do, not all, but a lot of people vote more like they're voting for the prom queen than for a state or a U.S. senator. I've heard so many people, I like him. I said, what about his record? Well, I don't know a thing about him, but I like him. He's cute, or he smiles right, or he tells good jokes. And I'm thinking, do you think you're in Las Vegas on the Strip watching a show? What is this? But that's the uninformed public that chooses to be uninformed. Because as I'm sure you know, you can Google anything and find something out today. When I was younger, you had to go study. You had to go do research in libraries and other places. You didn't have computers to do it like you do now. This is fun. That was hard. But yeah, term limits 100%, but I believe it's the public that has to step up and insist on them. Or tell the people, I won't vote for you if you don't do this. You're out of office if you don't do this. That's it. And common sense, the reason there's no common sense in government, look at the people that are in it. Thank you.
Ms. Black?
Yes, so I definitely believe there should be term limits. I believe that you should only be able to do the 8 years in each in the Senate or in the House and not be flipping, as Claire said. They could definitely run for a different, county or state, county or U.S. position. I don't have any problem with that. One thing I do think the party needs to do is they need to be grooming up new people to run. so that they are taking those career politicians' places. There needs to be a grooming system in place and a training program that they can, bring up other people. And I don't see that there is that available, at least not to my knowledge. The party has been laxed in that area, and I think they can do a better job. And maybe I'll be able to help in that area down the road. So thank you.
All right, and now we'll move to closing statements, and we're actually right on track. We'll start with Ms. Black.
Okay, well, as a mother and grandmother, I will fight for strengthening our families, not undermining them. I've served on the board of directors as board president for my local church, and I will fight for our religious freedom as well. I'm running for office because I want to protect your freedom and mine, and we need to rise up and be bold. I stand for faith, family, and freedom. If it goes against the Constitution or the Bible, I'm not voting for it. I look forward to serving the public. We, the people, need a voice, and I ask for your vote. Susan Black for House of Representatives, LD 28. Feel free to check out my website at susanblack4arizona.com. Thank you.
Mr. Van Steenwyk.
Yes, I'm asking for your vote because I believe it's time we need some people in the House and the Senate in Arizona that will make sure anything they vote for is constitutionally compliant. Because we have a lot of laws. I'll tell you right now, I've been at the Capitol a number of times in hearings and trying to stop certain bills from getting passed on the basis that they were against the Arizona Constitution. And our legislators had no idea that that was right. They said, what do you mean? I'd read them the Arizona Constitution. And that was the first time I think, had ever heard it. That's not a good idea when you have people in office that don't know what they're voting on, but do what the party bosses, our lobbyists, or the governor wants, because after all, they serve at their bidding. That's really what goes on. They get their money, unlike clean elections, from lobbyists, PACs, special interest groups, and they get their, shall we say, marching orders from the governor or the party bosses. That's how the system works. It's unfortunate, but it's like George Washington said, and I love this statement. Eventually, parties will be the enemy of government because they will do only what's good for themselves. We have got to stop this, and this can only be stopped with voters going out and voting against the career politicians, because that's what they are. When you're flipping from one house to another, and then I know the person that Susan's running against started out in the legislature, went to the Senate, now he's going back to the legislature. What would you call that? That's a career. I don't know what else to call it. We have got to put people in office that don't want careers. I don't need a career. I want to fix some things. I want to fix our children's future. I want to give them a guaranteed path to a job. I want to fix our shortened water supply. I want to fix our election system. And I want to fix our borders, not just the border. We've got problems coming in on all of our borders. You've got drugs and illegals coming in from California, New Mexico, Utah, Nevada, and Colorado. They're coming in on all sides of us, and nobody does a thing to stop it. There are things and solutions we can use to do this. If you want to learn a little more about me, go to Vote for Claire. That's Vote for Claire, CLAIR, no E. It's just CLAIR, voteforclaire.com. I've got a website. I'm on Facebook. In fact, if you want to, you can Google me at Van the Radio Man for when I was on the air, and you'll still find, I think, about 7 or 8 pages of Google stuff on me. So I'm out there. I appreciate and thank you all for allowing us to be on your show today. And I hope the voters really take heed to what we're trying to tell them. God bless you and have a great day.
All right. Well, this concludes our debate. To our candidates, we thank you so much for participating. To the voters, we thank all of you who took the time to watch the debate and inform yourselves before the August 2nd primary election. As a reminder, the voter registration deadline is July 5th, and early voting begins July 6th. All registered voters, including independent voters, can participate in the primary. We encourage you to visit azcleanelections.gov for official, accurate voting information. Thank you.